I'm gonna talk for. All right,
Awesome.
there we go. We're live. So practicing happy Wednesday night chats number 2. We're gonna talk about anxiety. You can see all these anxious faces cruising along here. So I'm Brian. We got Mitch. Mitch, say hello.
Hi there. How's it going?
We got Matt.
What's up?
Bachelor
Matt.
number 2.
We've got Casey. Casey, say hello so it puts your face on the thing.
Hello.
There we go.
Hello.
Dennis.
Hi.
Yeah, we're doing it. And we got
Oh my
Dan,
God.
who hasn't figured out how to put a picture on yet.
Hey guys,
But it's Dan. He's been all over the dang channel. You all heard Dan.
y'all know me.
Still the same old G. So, we're talking about anxiety today. Why anxiety? For me, it's really important to talk about issues that a lot of people face and not a lot of people talk about, right? So, I was just talking to a student today about programming, but he was dealing with essentially imposter syndrome. Like, it just feels like everybody else has got this stuff down and I'm struggling, right? Yeah, Casey, you know all about that, right? But for most people, we don't have an insight into their interiority. We don't know what's going on, what their struggle is, and we only get the face that they choose to present to the world. And so we end up in this situation where very often we're all struggling with the same stuff and everybody's pretending that they're not because they think everybody else is fine. And that's been my experience with anxiety. When I talk to people about anxiety, like the floodgates very often open. Like everybody's had an experience of anxiety, and it's very often a very significant experience for them. So it caused them a lot of distress, and they didn't know that everyone around them has shared that experience, and that there are so many opportunities to sort of share the coping mechanisms we've come up with, share the skills that we've developed. So bust it wide open, right? So I just put out the call to my buddies, just like, hey, I want to talk about anxiety. And everybody showed up because everybody's had an experience. This might not even be the whole crew for the evening, right? So, yeah, I just want to throw that out there. So let me start by just saying a little bit about my experience of anxiety, right? So for me, anxiety was like a low-grade part of my life. It was where I went under stress after the depression and procrastination had their say, right? So I lived a lot of my life in I'm depressed, so I'm not going to do the things that I need to do to take care of myself until it's so urgent that I'm having like a panic attack that I'm not going to be able to finish this thing on time. And only at that point would that overcome the will to stick my head in the sand and pretend that life isn't happening. And then I would frantically freak out, get all the things done, completely burn myself out, and the cycle would begin anew, right? So I'd live in this sort of like depression leads to procrastination and avoidance, leads to ever escalating anxiety until the anxiety peaks. I blow out my entire endocrine system, freaking out, but get a ton of stuff done. And then I'm so blown out that I have nothing left but to retreat into this cycle of depression, right? That was my life for a very long time. I got better at the depression game. And then I started working for a startup, and I basically stopped sleeping. And what that led to is there's an interesting phenomenon where if you sleep deprive yourself for long enough, like your body just decides that your higher level functions are not at all competent to manage the basic functions of keeping you alive, and it just shortcuts your lizard brain directly in, and every single thing in your life just gets evaluated under like, am I going to die or am I going to not die? And you'd be surprised the things that your lizard brain thinks are going to kill you. Like, for example, your phone ringing, which, I got to the point where I would have a panic attack when my phone rang, and it would just be like, okay, I think I'm dying.
Is that because that phone ringing kind of signified there was a call from work? Or
Yeah,
there was
at that point in my life,
yeah,
the phone ringing signified probably you're not going to sleep for the next 20 to 24 hours.
Been
right?
there.
Like the phone rings and it's like, oh, they did what? And we have to do what? And this is how many days late by the time I'm hearing about it? And then it was just like, okay, well, now I got to do this marathon session of work. And my body just got to the point where it was just conditioned that is like, oh God, no, oh God, this is going to be so damaging. And then, it's like, I can't interact with people in that state. I can't focus in that state because my whole, I'm just standing there with the shakes at my computer trying to like focus well enough to actually get any work done. And it got to the point where I'd have to start doing like basic caretaking activities for like an hour before I could even start to do like have enough focus to do anything. So I'd like go and just scrub my bathroom for an hour because it was just a simple thing that I could do that was taking care of me. That is like, this is the signal, like this is a thing that's going to make our life better. That's going to make the things that we need to do happen more easily and more pleasantly. And that could sort of settle my system down and give me enough time for the actual chemical changes that happen.
When I do that, my wife calls it stress cleaning.
Yeah.
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 I do. I clean the kitchen when I get stressed all the time.
Yeah.
It's a total coping mechanism.
And it really is like sending the signal to the body, like, hey, we're taking care, because this is a thing that, is deeply embedded that we have to do. We have to clean to our spaces to take care of ourselves, and giving enough time for the physiological changes that the panic attack has wrought on your body to start unwinding. And I think that one thing that doesn't get out there and that a lot of people who haven't had that experience have a difficulty really sympathizing with is that there's nothing you can do to stop feeling that, right? It happens, and then it's like, this is just my life until these chemicals wear off. And that's where it is. So what can I do in the interim between now and a time when I can function in something closer to my normal to take care of myself, to ease that problem along instead of resisting this experience and exacerbating it and making it intensify. So that's my deal. When I quit that job, it took 3 months of like concerted effort, daily meditation, and just absolute emphasis on self-care taking to return to something like normal, but it like permanently damaged my ability to modulate my sleep cycle. So like if I try to resist my body wanting to go to sleep at different times, like it's a no-go at this point, right? So that's an argument for not working like over 100 hours a week.
Oh yeah.
But
I know the feeling so very well.
Yeah. So anyways, I just want to open it up. Does anybody have something that arises for them that they want to share in response to that, or just want to on something?
I would say the first job I had out of college really reminds me of what you said. I thought it'd be cool. I thought it'd be awesome to be a chemist. Oh God, no, don't be a chemist in the petroleum industry, because tankers full of crude oil will show up in Richmond at 3 a.m, and you're expected to go there and work at 3 a.m, exhausted. And I think what broke me was the fact that at like 3:30 in the morning one day, I was mixing concentrated sulfuric acid and falling asleep. And I was like, this can't be my life.
Oh God.
This can't be my life. And like I was done. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I left that job for a better one, and that ended up only lasting about 2 months, and then I did well in the next one. Now I'm feeling it a lot right now with engineering, as most engineers do, imposter syndrome, and then like the overwhelming like feeling of I've got to learn all of what now. I've got to learn this. I got to learn that, and I kind of just broke it down to the fact of, and just like speak on that last point here, is I'm dealing with this just one thing at a time. Like I really can't do anything about it, and honestly, like the one thing, and this is like obviously very typical of me, and you guys all know, like this has really helped me, but like jiu-jitsu is like just taught me to be like, I know, being comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? Like, you're going to be in shit positions sometimes. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse. You're going to be in bad positions sometimes, and you just got to be comfortable with the fact that this person is gonna be just squeezing you or choking you or hurting you, and you just
okay. I
life
want
isn't
to
do that.
Can we take some
Sorry.
time to acknowledge that Casey made it 2 whole minutes before talking about jiu-jitsu?
Well done, Casey.
And I feel like that's,
God forbid the man try to relate to
we gotta
discipline.
celebrate everybody's progress.
I mean, I am wearing a jiu-jitsu shirt right now too.
Yeah, but like, I think it's a very solid point to say that you relate to like your own methodology of like self-discipline and things that have like helped you to like deal with some of those things. Like, I think that's perfectly valid.
Yeah, totally. And it's, you have to have the touchstones in your life that allow you to develop the cognitive skills that support you being a happy human being. And if whatever it is that you are passionate about will teach you how to be a happy human being if you will open yourself up to learning about it.
You know what's ironic though? The harder that I try to become a better engineer or like try to switch jobs or whatever, the less I go to jiu-jitsu, and I find that ironic, So I have to really pay attention to the things that has brought me so much goodness in my life. I don't know if that's the actual like grammatically correct sentence, but so much good in my life, I have to keep going to return the favor to the jiu-jitsu gods.
So there's a lesson to draw from that, which is that the things that take care of us are the first things that go under stress.
Yeah.
Right. As soon as you get stressed out, the things that actually improve your life, the things that make your life manageable, are going to be the first things that disappear from your life. I tell people all the time, like, my number one thing is meditation. I didn't do it for the worst year and a half of my college career, right? I had already been meditating for like 6 years at that point. I just had a year and a half where I didn't meditate. And I was like, what happened here? And I was like, oh, everything was all a mess. Oh, okay. And that disappeared from my life. So, very sympathetic to that experience, that the first thing that goes, and so that's something to be really mindful of, is when we're encountering stress, what structures can we build to make sure that we're still taking care of the things that take care of us? And, that can mean reaching out to people, letting people know what you're going through, so that, people in your life are reminding you, like, hey, you're not doing these things that you love. That's not going to support you long term.
Yeah. It also helps to be, in shape, healthy body, healthy mind.
I'll agree with that one. That's actually, I think actually getting on a normal exercise routine and actually losing a lot of weight and starting to eat healthy all the time has been incredibly important. And actually,
I was gonna say you look a little slim in the face, but I didn't want to make it. I didn't want my wife to get jealous. She could hear me. So
you didn't want that juxtaposition. You guys are right next to each other on the little bar.
I know, she's like right in the other room. She can hear me, and like Dennis likes Indian movies. Ramen likes Indian movies, so it just kind of fits right in.
Yeah, it's dangerous, fast and dangerous. So. But let's let
Dennis, just like a poor, uneducated white man, would just come in and swoop out, swoop out your wife.
Why do you think I go to BlizzCon every year?
All right,
we are way off track.
Sorry, we had a point. Dennis was making one.
Yeah. Well, no, it was just backing up what Casey was saying, is that like actually taking care of yourself, like, and especially exercise is a big one, but exercise and diet, because that's the other thing I found out is like, if you're not eating shit all the time, you're gonna feel better. Which Brian actually linked to you. Like, there's a BBC like radio program from BBC4 going on right now where they're talking about all the studies they're doing based on bacteria in your gut and how that relates actually to your mental health, and finding out where they're seeing a lot of these correlations. It's exciting.
So Dawn made it in. Dawn. So that's Dawn, everybody. I think you shouted enough to temporarily take center stage. So when you speak, it will like put your camera on the stream, cool. Which is tight. There you go. So there's Dawn. We just talked a little bit about sort of background, life experiences, dealing with anxiety, the why that we're here, which is just that, like, I just put out that I wanted to talk about anxiety. Look how many people are here.
Oh yeah.
It's not like I culled thousands of people to find the 6 people who have anxiety. This is just like the first 8 people that I talk to are just like 6 of them are like, yeah, absolutely. I have that life experience, right? So we need to talk about it. Anyway, so you're caught up. So Dennis.
Hi.
Casey you're making the excellent point, right? That your physical health supports your mental health. They're inextricably linked, right? Yeah. It's not like, oh, I got to get my mind straight, so I have to do all these mind-focused things. It's no, actually, I got to get my being squared away, and all of the facets of that. The brain is an organ; it has a role to play, but it's not the whole thing. And very often, I don't know, a lot of us are nerds, and nerds can get up in their heads a lot and neglect the self-care of the body. So, creating a platform, right, for a healthy and positive experience is crucial, and it's going to give you a lot more of just the sorts of physiological tools, right, the levers to pull on to manage a stressful experience in a way that doesn't drive you towards an ever-escalating experience of anxiety. So, yeah, awesome. Anybody else got anything rising to mind for them?
Sure. Yeah, I'm just going to chime in and agree with that sentiment. Like for me, when I was really struggling with anxiety, the first time I encountered, I didn't really know what it was. And, I was going to doctors and they gave me like pills and those made it worse. And, I tried all this stuff and it wasn't really until I just started obviously becoming more familiar with it and being less scared of it. The panic attacks in particular, but also, yeah, taking care of myself and starting to work out and find that stress relief through exercise. That really was the only thing that helped pull me out of that.
I think you touched on a really good point, Don. And Brian, I brought this up earlier too. I don't think a lot of people actually know what that feeling of panic or just that anxiety is. They're just like, oh shit, like I don't know what's going on, and they're just uninformed. I remember I want to say when I was making the transition from chemistry to engineering, I was sitting at this data analytics class at General Assembly fucking panicking because I just didn't know how to write this SQL query. And in my head, I'm like, if I don't know how to write this, I'm not going to be able to make the transition. And if I can't make the transition, I can't do this. I can't do X, Y, and Z. And I just started sweating and just breathing heavy. And I was like, I just screw this. I got up and walked out and just needed to get away.
Yeah. And so I think that one of the key things here physiologically is it's a triggering of very deep instinctual chemical responses in your body, right? It's for whatever reason, your body believes that it's facing an existential threat. Like you are literally channeling all the mechanisms that are meant to save you if you encounter a lion. Right?
Goddamn evolution.
And here you are just living your life, doing relatively normal things. And suddenly all of these chemical cascades kick off and your fight or flight response is checked in. And it's impossible for that not to kind of feel like you're dying, right? You're just shaking and the adrenaline's going and your heart's beating and you're sweating and everything in your body is telling you just run, just go. And you don't have anything to attach that to. If you were really facing a lion, everything about that situation would be perfectly explicable and therefore not frightening, right? The lion would be frightening, the response would not be. But if you're just facing a spreadsheet, right, or a conversation at work and you're having that experience, there's nowhere to attach that because it's so disproportionate. And so then it escalates this cycle of fear because you're just suddenly faced with this experience that feels incredibly real. There's no way for that not to feel like this is an incredibly significant and real experience because your brain is tuned to respond to those chemicals. And it's like, how can I die in an office? Right? Like, how can I die just doing the normal things of my life? But that's what's happening.
Yeah.
I think the tricky thing about that is that the common symptoms of a panic attack can start to feel a lot like the common symptoms of a heart attack. And I think that's where a lot of people get bogged down in the cycle of reoccurring panic attacks because it feels like something's physically wrong with you. And the fight or flight kicks in and you're like, oh, like I'm short of breath. I feel tired. I feel a little bit like sweaty. I feel like I'm having a heart attack.
Yeah, that was exactly it for me. Mine would start with palpitations.
Yeah.
And even that alone would be enough to set it off, and I'd start getting, this creeping kind of feeling up the back of my neck, and then that would creep me out. And it was really this cycle that would just spiral down. Like the symptoms would feed back into the psychological response, which would feed into more symptoms. And, I find myself hyperventilating in my car on the drive home, and I'd have to pull off the freeway, and my heart's pounding, and I'm like, oh God, what's going on? Like I can barely, see straight. And I went into the ER. I've gone in several times for panic attacks, because not only are you having a physical response, but you are 100% convinced that it is real this time.
Here's what's really interesting about that too, Don, is you telling me that you had been to the ER 3 times was like a great source of relief for me, because like I thought I was the only person to ever have that happen. Like I was on the way to my kid's baby shower in San Diego. Like I had to go home for a flight and get ready and get on this plane. And I started having heart palpitations, and I was like driving Kelly's car home from work, and I thought, I'm having a fucking heart attack. I had to like get out of my car and like go buy a candy bar because I thought my body needed sugar, because I thought like, oh, maybe I'm just low blood sugar. I'm drinking water, and I got so bad that I had to call a fucking ambulance to come get me to an EKG. And that was like a secret shame of mine for a while. Like only my closest friends and family knew about it. Because you can't really like, when you don't understand like how panic attacks work and how they affect a lot of people, you don't want to like go tell your boss like, hey, like I don't feel well today because I'm having a panic attack and I think I'm having a heart attack, or etc. Right? And you don't want to go on Facebook and say like, hey, this thing is happening to me.
Yeah.
Like where I seemingly panic or fear for my life for no reason sometimes, because you view it as like a societal thing, as like a sign of weakness that people are going to frown upon or not support you in. And so hearing you talk about it one day, Don, like I remember it just, I don't know if I was opening up about it or what, but you told me how often you'd been in the hospital for it, and I was like, oh my God, thank God. Like somebody else also had to go get hooked up to an EKG. It's not just me. And that's really the whole point of this episode, right? Like, is those kind of experiences, like to the layman, I call them, because I'm a victim of like, I've probably had, I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 200 to 300 panic attacks at this point over the course of the last 2.5 years. They don't know that everybody else is out there like experiencing that same shit. So it's difficult too. You get resources online, but to convince yourself that you're not experiencing something different than everybody else is. So even when I had the resources in hand, that panic attacks were a common thing for a lot of people, and that they weren't heart attacks, and that they weren't often immediately dangerous to a person, I still couldn't like trick myself into believing that that was the case, that I was safe, right? Like I was like, no, mine are different. My panic attacks are more extreme, and I can really feel my heart palpitating and etc. So just to be the cycle, and you just the ultimate thing is you just can't be alone in the dark on it.
Yeah. And you always get that, you tell yourself that story too, of like, well, this time, like, what if it's not
right
an anxiety attack?
That's
what if this time it is the heart attack?
What if this time it is, right? Yeah. And that's, and you're in that mental state where you're ready to believe that.
Totally. It took me a year of I'd say I had like 4 or 5 a week, probably, like bad ones, because getting on BART, I had to get on BART every day to go to work. Being like in an enclosed space in a tube where there was no could be no medical response to me having a heart attack was terrifying for me.
Yeah, for me it was driving home, commuting home, when I had about a 30-mile commute for a while there, and I'd be working late, get off work at 10:30, 11 o'clock, and still have to drive for another 30 minutes in the dark, and about halfway through that drive, it's like all I want to do is be done with this and get out of the car, and just that knowing that I'm stuck driving for another 15-20 minutes or whatever was like, I just start to feel trapped, and then everything would just close in. And
totally.
Yeah.
And so a year out, I was finally able to be like, I've been thinking I was going to have a heart attack every day for an entire year. I've got
I'll give you a heart attack.
Right? A year's worth of evidence that maybe that's not going to happen now.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about evidence, right? I'm on this documentation train. Y'all have probably heard it from me, right? Like document. Just whatever experience you're having, get it out of your head and into some durable format, right? Because when it's in your head, you can believe all sorts of things about it. And that's because exactly what you guys were just talking about, right? The physiological determinants of your experience. When you have all of those hormones going, things are really believable that in other contexts would not be believable. So you need to be able to come back to that experience when the chemicals have flushed out of the system and you can evaluate it from a different frame of mind, right? But if you rely on just recollecting what your experience was, there's going to be just some tremendous gaps. So if you can document even on the grossest level of this, did I have a panic attack today or not, so that you can see the trend over time, right? Yeah. So just have some basic indications of severity, right? So that you can see, are these getting more severe or are they getting less severe? Just having that information available to you is going to give you sort of the beginnings of the foundation of the depth of knowledge to start to sort of counter programming the mental aspects of it. Right.
The other thing that does is it kind of like it starts setting out for you, like not necessarily triggers, but like what sort of like stimulus is a part of like, creating that experience for you. And so like what I noticed from so I set out like for an entire month to document like every day, like how I felt if I had a panic attack or not. And like I could start checking things off the box, right? Like, is it when I drink? It's like, okay, no, I drank pretty heavily for my birthday. I didn't have a panic attack after that. It's like, oh, is it when I work out? You can start kind of checking things off the list.
Mm-hmm. And then as you hone in on the things that it is, then you can start figuring out what your strategies are going to be when those sorts of situations are unavoidable. And even just knowing this is a situation where that sort of cognition can get started. So I just need to be paying extra close attention to what's happening up here, because I don't want to wake up 75% of the way to a panic attack.
Right.
I want to see this is going on. Okay, can I create some space here for me to settle down? Can I remove myself from this situation that I find stressful? Can I, what are the caretaking behaviors that can kick in early? Because once it's kicked off, that's it. You're just stuck in that experience for a while,
What I noticed too is that, one, there's a couple important things that and this is from talking to health professionals and a lot of people around me that experience the same things, that stress is cumulative. And that what I found most common is that I would experience anxiety in waves. Like things would be okay. I'd be in the trough of a wave for a while and I wouldn't have any panic attacks. And then all of a sudden I'd encounter a lot of stress, and cumulatively, then I would have a swarm of panic attacks. Is that funny, Casey?
No, that's funny because it happened to me.
Right?
Ramen and I were driving home, and I'm like, I haven't had an altercation with my family in a really long time. Lo and behold, one on Friday night, one on Saturday night, and I'm just like, great, this is awesome. This is exactly what I needed in my life right now. Getting staticky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little static.
Who's that from?
There it goes. Whatever you just did fixed it, Casey.
Really?
Yeah, that's you, dog.
Back your headset.
That's weird. Okay.
Technology.
Yay.
I troubleshooted it, guys.
Yeah. Excellent. We'll carry it off.
Good racial ability.
So.
we talked
about
we had such a good vibe going.
So to keep it on track and actually
hold up. Can we just acknowledge that Casey made it half an hour without making anything about him being Indian? So yeah. I feel like you are making some serious strides, Casey, and I want to acknowledge that.
Gold star.
So, yeah, exactly. 2 minutes before he got into the jiu-jitsu, 30 minutes before it was about being brown.
Relevant, right? Jiu-jitsu helped me progress in my life and be a better human being. So I can't
That is true. You gotta let your beauty shine, Casey.
It won't be long until I talk about relating to living the 6 months I lived in China.
Right?
I think I talk about those too. Everyone's got their thing.
Thank God nobody does CrossFit or is a vegan.
Another thing I want to put out there for people.
Wait, back on track.
The other thing I want to suggest to people too, if you're out there experiencing especially the more severe situations like generalized panic or agoraphobia, where a lot of people get locked into, they don't want to go places where they've had panic attacks before because they're afraid they'll have another panic attack there. And I found that I had to just slowly challenge myself on those things. So my first panic attack was on the way to an airport. So I never wanted to go to airports after that. Like, fuck, I'm immediately gonna have a panic attack if I get there. So my coping mechanism for that was like, okay, I was like, I'm gonna just drive to the airport today, and then I'll drive home. And then I'm gonna drive to the airport today and maybe go inside for a while and just like look around the terminal and then go home. And I don't think I ended up on any watch lists from this, but I just worked that way. I had a big flight coming and finally got on, you know. And I think that the other thing too is making sure you don't have anything to hide behind. So something that was really helpful for me was going and getting, you know, because my anxiety a lot of times stems from me not taking care of myself. So a fear of death from, you know, being too fat and eating the wrong things, etc. So I went and I got all my blood work done, and I got a physical, and I just did everything I could to make sure like I knew everything there was to know about like the internal workings of my body. And once you know everything, then you don't, in the middle of your panic attacks, you can't be like, it just takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. So finding out your heart's healthy, finding out your lungs are in good shape, you know, etc. I found helpful.
Yeah,
I haven't got to that point yet. I'm still going through the enjoyable phase where you get to have the occasional existential crises where you see yourself on your deathbed and you just are like, cool, there's my life. I can see 40, 50, 60 years ahead. I see myself surrounded by my loved ones on my deathbed, and I can just like instantly like my life flashes before my eyes. Like literally I had my son 2 years ago. My wife rather gave birth to our son 2 years ago. Once I became a father, that's where all of that started happening for me. And like they were happening on a weekly basis. I'd be like commuting to work, and I would just like feel like I'm about to like my world would just fall out from under me, and then it would be like 15 minutes of me sitting in my car recovering my shit. Like, okay, well, got to suck it up and go to work now. I don't really have a choice, even though I feel like my world is over. Like, because like I don't know. I guess those are the things that prelude like a midlife crisis and all that kind of shit. But
Mitch, I had the same thing, dude. My panic attacks were preceded by, you know, my kid coming.
Well, I thought I was going to live forever before I was a father.
Totally.
Like I had this total. I mean, you guys know. I mean, I work in the startup scene, I used to work in the startup scene in the Silicon Valley, and was like I felt like I was invincible because I kind of was. I was on this rocket ship for a long time, and the what I would really much call the gift of parenthood kind of gave me a much necessary sort of dose of reality, though I don't necessarily have all my foundation in place on how to like cope with that reality.
If I took what you guys have gone through, Mitch and Dan, and I internalized it, and then you throw in a little bit of Gary V, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like I didn't give death any thought until you guys had kids, and then Gary V was like, don't live life without regrets. And I'm like, I've lived 32 years, and what do I have to show for it? 32 years went like that. That is my thought process. 32 years that went like that. If I continue if I stop going to jiu-jitsu, I brought it up again. But if I don't take care of myself, I don't even have I don't have another 20. I don't. And I need to make sure the next 20 or 30 that I have, they count. Because I've already wasted, in my opinion, I've wasted 32.
Well, so let's put this in a healthy frame, right? Like, so there's the recognition that life has a significance that's often underappreciated, right? So we're cruising along through life, and suddenly we go, whoa, like I have to decide what my life is and what it's going to be and what its significance is and what actually is going to be a well-lived life for me, something that I will look back on and really feel good about, right? And that has to happen somewhere in your transition into adulthood, right? Mm-hmm. And we have this sort of myth that like you're 18 and because the government can give you a gun, you're an adult now. And it's not even close to true, right? Like you hit 25, you probably have all the modules of your brain by that point, probably, not necessarily. And then you're starting to have some genuine adult experience.
Right. They haven't been initialized. You may have those modules.
Yeah, but you gotta do some living where they can do some helpful stuff for you, right? Living. And so by the time you're 30, you've got like 5 years of real adult experience, and you can sort of start to get a feel for the arc of your life, and probably somewhere around there, it's going to click with you like, oh,
there's an end of that path.
Well, there's an end of that path.
That's for me.
There's a trajectory, and it's now my responsibility to decide what that trajectory is, right? I've lived most of my life with other people telling me what my life is about, right? And now suddenly the realization, right? But with that realization, it can go into this really unhelpful frame where it feels like, now I got to get all this settled all at once. Otherwise, the bad thing, right? Like I'm going to die alone. And nobody's ever going to love me. And, you know, all of those things are not contributing to you being a happy human being, right? So there's the moment of the realization, and then there's making sure that ends up in a happy frame, right? Or a healthful frame that's going to support you, right? Which is now I have the opportunity, right? All lights are green. I'm ready to go. I can decide what meaning looks like in my life, right? And I don't have to be responsive to other people's opinions about what my life needs to be, right? Hopefully there's some people in your life who are contributing opinions that push you in directions that are helpful and that are going to actually leave you fulfilled. But, you know, for the situations where that's not so much,
that's definitely a conversation for another day.
Yeah, but
you are the company. You are the company you keep.
You're in the driver's seat, right? That's what that realization can be.
Absolutely.
Right. And making sure, and you know, for a lot of people, having kids is something that really drives that, because it's now I have to be responsible for making those sorts of shaping determinations for somebody else.
Not only that, but it brings to bear the idea that like I'm responsible for taking care of somebody else, which means that I have to keep myself in a capacity that allows me to do that. So now I have to be aware, like, how's my diet? Like, am I going to live another 20 years to make sure this kid gets to college? Like,
God damn it.
You know, my liver is as bad as Casey's should be, and I have to take care of that. And that's kind of the stuff that all of us have to figure out.
Okay, I don't know actually how bad my liver is. I did have blood work done, and I'm healthy, so
I'm gonna have to go get a physical and all my blood in it and everything done, because now that I've passed tax, the biggest fear I had going on, which was my tax debt, the tax burden. I thought I owed like way more money than it turned out I did. And so like now I'm like, oh my God, turns out I should have like not
dealt
been
with that a long time ago.
Yeah, I should have dealt with that. Well, big surprise. And I'm totally much of what Brian was describing earlier. But yeah, once I got through the tax stuff, and my wife is like, cool, well, life insurance and a will and all this stuff. We are parents. We need to deal with those like adulting things that really fucking matter. And so now that means I have to go deal with all those things that I've been now I have no choice. Inevitability has caught up with me.
Yeah.
So now what?
Yeah, now what? Oh, I think we had a good rock talk. Unless somebody's got something that's really driving them. I think I muted Casey.
Oh, why did you mute me?
I was just testing to see if that buzz was your mic.
Hey Don, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Where did you land, man? Are you good now? Do you still have one every couple of months? Like, where are you at?
I was good for a long time, and it never really goes away. I'm still dealing with it. I mean, thankfully now I know how to deal with like the outright, overt anxiety attacks and stuff. But the thing I've noticed is that it's very sneaky, and it will creep into your life in new and unexpected ways. As soon as you learn to deal with it in one way, it shows up in a different form. And I'm, especially in the last couple of years, I've been learning to identify all those different ways that it can creep in, and break myself out of being in that sort of anxious state, and break myself out of those symptoms that are not me and not who I am, and that are the result of this other these other forces acting on me. So I mean, I'm doing pretty well now. I'm doing more self-care, because I'm the same way. Like I think you guys were talking earlier about like when things get stressful, the first thing that goes away is like taking care of yourself, right? Like
Yeah.
you stop, working out, you stop eating right, you stop going to bed on time. And I'm definitely guilty of that. And, it's been off and on over the years, but I would say that I'm trending upwards.
That's great. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
I just want to point out to other people out there, like, for a group of people, some of us who had panic attacks, like literally daily or a bunch of times a week, like it's going to get better. And vigilance, a good diet, sleep, avoidance of too many sugars, and surrounding yourself with positive, forward-thinking people will really help a lot. And you can climb out of that hole.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
And
sorry, go ahead, Brian.
The image that I always like to think about is peeling the onion, right? You guys remember that book, Alterac Valley? Right? Is that every time, these, and I think, Don's hit at it perfectly, right? That it's not you, right? It's something that's being done to you.
Yeah.
And these forces, they're within you, but they don't live at the core of your being. And you can make choices that shape how those influences play out in your life. But as you get better, what you will discover is that there's a next layer and a next layer and a next layer. It's surprisingly subtle the way that these processes manifest. And that, again, documentation, right? Okay, I've got the outer layer and the next layer in and the next layer in on lock. And I've trained myself really well, and I'm almost unconsciously just taking care of these things, but what's the new thing, right? Which is great. The head teacher at the monastery used to say there's never an excuse to be bored, right? Because there's always something going on in your mind that you could benefit from paying attention to. But if you are documenting, you see that upward trajectory, right? Dan is very right that you can get yourself out of that hole and you can get yourself headed towards a much more positive experience. And it's really, really fun, right? To see like, oh, it's actually working for me. Like to actually be able to look at that as the experience that I was having, and this is where I am today. And that's actually a lot to be proud of, right? Because there are a lot of folks who are struggling and not taking the steps to have a more positive experience. And here I am, I'm doing it. I'm making it happen, right? So that's something to celebrate. That's another side effect of you actually have the proof of your victories, and you can celebrate them. It might even get to like an asatru status, right? Get yourself a horn of boasting and proclaim your victories for all to hear.
Hey Dennis, were you going to add something?
Oh, I was actually going to say on that documentation thing, actually, I have it right here. Oh, God, I don't think this is going to work out well. But so I actually have been tracking every week this year, and like it's color coded for everything that's going on. Once again, you can't see it too well. But I actually, this last week, had my first entire week, 7 days in a row of happy days, of like good days in ever.
Nice.
And so it's actually kind of crazy. But yeah, I've been talking with Brian about that, of the upward trajectory, because we talked about this last week on this cast as well. But January was 14 days that were good, and then February was 16. March was 17, and now for April we're at 20. And like I said, like it's the first week, like it's a first Monday through Sunday that was actually every day was a green day for me. But the whole fact of actually any time I ever had a day that wasn't good, like any day on here that's yellow or blue or red, or like these color coded like anxiety attacks or panic attacks, things like that, I actually have these written down, and I can go back through the journal, and then like on the days, like I have, each day actually has journal logs of what happened. So I can be like, what the fuck was it that caused, I'm sorry for the cussing, what was it that caused me to be depressed for these 3 days in a row, and kind of like see and write down what those warning signs were in those feelings. Because especially this week got really stressful with the league, but like, I was noticing it and going like, I'm not about to let this like ruin my happy streak, because I'm like 3 days into this week of happy as well. And I'm like, heavens no,
Yeah.
this isn't going to win out. And so it's more like it's a lot of documenting what those feelings are and not avoiding them. Because I think in the past, what I would always do is like, like Dom was talking about, you have the feelings in the back, there's feelings all over and they're festering and you're just like trying to ignore it and it keeps getting worse. And instead, like, I'm actually stopping and writing down and going, what was happening? Why was that happening? And try and actually document it all. And it's really been super helpful for this year. It's been crazy.
Nice. Man.
Shocking.
That's great. I'm gonna have to try that.
I can't
Honestly,
believe that we made it all the way this far, actually, in a discussion of anxiety without talking about the fact that resisting it makes it worse.
So much worse.
Yeah.
Right? That was the first thing on my mind when I like set up the little call, and it just gone, right? Right, but like, yeah, if you don't want to be especially if you've reached panic attack level, if you don't want to be having a panic attack, that is going to make it so much worse. And so the first training, right, for coping with that situation is accepting that this is my experience right now, and I know that it's gonna be my experience right now for a while, and I gotta be able to, despite the fact that it objectively sucks, accept that and say, okay, it's okay for me to be having these feelings. It's okay for me to be having these experiences. And I just have to do what I can to take care of myself within this experience until it has time to pass through. Because if you want it to be over, it's just going to keep hanging on. Can I get an amen?
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The harder you fight it, the worse it gets. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I like to give myself a little time limit, like a schedule. Like I hit panic attack, I look at my watch immediately and I'm like, okay, for the next 10 minutes, I'm just gonna lay down here, just relax, just breathe. And then for the next 5 minutes after that, I'm gonna do something really dumb, like just organize the forks for 5 whole minutes. And then after that, I'm gonna start doing some dishes, and I just like creep out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So doing the dishes, it's actually something I wanted to bring up, which is that is one of my like Zen activities that I do that always makes me feel better about whatever is bothering me. And this is cheesy, but while I'm doing the dishes, I was thinking about the fact that a lot of my anxiety comes from like all these little day-to-day things that I see, but I don't think about or tackle right away. Things you see around the house, like, oh, someday I should clean up those boxes, and someday I should do this, and someday I need to do that. No, there's this mail I need to attend to, and there's this, whatever. And all this stuff is rattling around, and it's in your subconscious mind because you're not really giving it, you're procrastinating, you're not really giving it the attention to that it needs. And it's like the dishes piling up. Full on, it is like a sink of dirty dishes. And the thing that sucks about doing dishes is when you let the sink get completely full, it's fucking harder to wash all the dishes because you have no room.
Yeah.
And like, if you just are, diligent about doing your dishes like on a regular basis, it's so much easier, and you're just more happy because you look at the sink and it's clean and nice.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, it's kind of a cheap metaphor, but it totally clicked for me while I was doing it one day, and I was like, man, like the more often I do this, the easier it is. But like once you get underneath it and it's a big pile up, it's just so much harder to crawl out. So much more work, and you want to do it even less every time.
Mm-hmm.
You just summarized the entirety of the Zen aesthetic. Like, why do those monasteries look so organized and cleaned? Right? At the monastery, they used to say that the mess doesn't just live over there; it lives in your mind as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's 100% your space. Your space reflects your mind, and your mind reflects your space. I say as I look around my disorganized room, the thoroughly disorganized life,
Everything directly out of frame is
it's
not great.
On fire.
Do
you guys not see all of this behind me?
Yeah.
This is a lack of room. But what are you gonna do?
We just assumed you were in an acoustic or in a closet for acoustics.
Oh no,
Little storage closet.
Someone doesn't like drying their clothes in the dryer, so we have to dry it on a rack.
But we're all works in progress, right?
Yeah.
We're all defined by where we're headed, not where we are. So
hey, this year's going to be better than the last. I can tell you that.
Oh, this is going to be a good year. I can feel this is going to be a good year.
Can we all talk about Wholesome 2018?
Oh, yeah, it's going to be wholesome and great.
Right?
Yeah, also 2018.
Yeah, looking for opportunities to support ourselves and having positive life experiences. You know, let's do it.
All right, I fucking hate you people. Bye.
Dan ending it on a high note. All right, let's shut it off. Thanks for the job. Thanks for the rock talk, guys.
It's good
Yeah,
times.
it was good,
Bye.
man. Yeah, bye.